Having the right tools is the secret to being a better gardener. Here are my essentials and how I keep them in good working order. Tool number one is a spade. This is one of the garden's workhorses. For planting trees, shrubs, border perennials, any planting jobs, it's brilliant. For earthing up potatoes to make sure that no light gets to the tubers, but please never ever call it a shovel. Builders use shovels, gardeners use spades. A shovel is wider, more dished, it's for scooping up things. A spade is for digging holes. This is a stainless steel spade. This slides in and out of soil that much more readily when it's stainless steel. What to look for? Balance in your hand. It should feel comfortable. Look at it sitting there. There's the blade, here's the shaft. The critical place is where it joins the shank here. It needs to be smooth. You're going to be running your hand up and down this. If it's got sticky out bits on it, it starts to get extremely uncomfortable to use. The handle too needs to be smooth and comfortable. This is a Y handle or a YD. You can also get T-shaped handles. Use whichever you like. There's no rule, but that is a good spade. It's well balanced, it's well made. Don't go for the cheapest, go for the best, and it will last you a lifetime. Next up, the rake. This is what most people think of as a rake, and this is most people's idea of a rake. Did you notice I leaned it with the teeth upwards? Never, ever, ever put a rake like that, because you'll tread on it and it'll come up and whack you in the eye. Always stand it like that. I remember being told off by a lecturer at Horticultural College, and I was over raking the soil. He said, stop it, stop it. What? He said, the rake is not for breaking down soil. That's what a fork is for. The rake is for levelling, and you only need a few strokes across the ground to make it level with a rake. There are other rakes as well. There's the famous springbok rake, this one with wire tines, the nearest we get to a musical instrument in the garden. This has one use, and one use only, for raking dead grass, thatch and moss out of a lawn. Far better for leaves on gravel or on the lawn is this, the plastic or rubber-toothed rake, and these are much more giving. They don't get stuck in the grass, they sweep across the top and are really efficient and effective at sweeping up leaves. If you can only run to one, I'd get this one, because you can actually use it for levelling the soil a little. It's quite delicate really. The wire tooth rake, not so much. So I find this is a really useful implement in the garden and not terribly expensive. Thank you. And so to the implement I use most in the garden, the fork. Like the spade, this comes in a smaller size too, the border fork, and if you're doing a lot of work with it in between border perennials, lightly forking things over, the border fork is really quite useful, because being that much narrower, it's only about that across, you can work between plants much better. You can use it for forking over ground to relieve compaction, for forking up compost, for breaking down soil, for levelling soil, for aerating the lawn when you stick it in, for digging up plants. There seem to be no end of uses for the garden fork. And when it's stainless steel, look how quickly it cleans with your hand, just wiping that muck off there. Beautiful. Smooth shaft, well balanced. You'll see again it sits quite comfortably in the palm of your hand, and it's also absolutely wonderful for leaning on and giving your garden what my dad would have called a good coat of looking at. And so to cutting tools. The most useful cutting tool in the garden, the pair of secateurs. You can get some which cut against a flat blade. They're called anvil secateurs, but these have a scissor action. I look for a pair that sits comfortably in my hand. With secateurs you can get different sizes, some with longer handles, which mean often it gives you better torque and they can cut slightly thicker stems. I would never cut anything with secateurs that was more than ½ inch, more than about 1 centimetre, but they are great and absolutely flawless for pruning roses, pruning trees, shrubs, pruning any stem less than ½ inch, 1 centimetre in diameter. They are your ultimate cutting tool. You can use them to slit open bags of fertiliser and bags of compost. You can get a holster, which I use regularly, which will allow them to fasten on your belt, and this becomes your 6-shooter in the garden. Don't stint yourself. Don't buy cheap ones which won't last very long. These little parts here can all be replaced, and a good pair of secateurs that's looked after will last you for a good many years. These are for cutting individual stems. If you've got small amounts of hedging to trim, take you an age with a pair of secateurs, you need these garden shears. Wooden handles here and steel blades. These are lightweight. Oh gosh, to find a pair of lightweight shears that are sharp, well oiled, and again, like the secateurs, keep them free of dried sticky sap with a bit of emery paper. Do you remember the old-fashioned garden shears that sort of came out here before they went in? They were really heavy. They seemed to be made of iron. You could clip with them for about 10 minutes before your arms were falling off. These are so lovely and so lightweight that you'd be happy to clip for an hour or more with these. Make sure they don't wrap your knuckles when you close them. And these are great for small bits of topiary, for clipping hedges that aren't too large or too long, and the sort of garden's equivalent of the scythe, which silently swishes its way through a meadow. They do have one refinement, and that is, if you look here, you'll see the blade goes in, and that means if you do get a stem which is rather thicker than 1/8 and approaching sort of 1/4 inch, get it right down there, then clip it, and you've got much more chance of going through it in one. Neat, eh? There are 2 small hand tools which are really extraordinarily useful: the trowel and the hand fork. Now, to be absolutely honest, I don't use a little hand fork much, but if you've got small raised beds and you find bending difficult, this is quite good for pricking over the soil in between plants and for easing out weeds. But for me, one of the other most useful implements in the garden is the trowel. This is used for planting anything below that big. When you see people using these, they go, "Oh, please." That is not the way to use a trowel. A trowel is used that way round to dig a hole, put a plant in or a bulb, and then put the earth back. Like that, with that sitting in the ball of your hand. I never want to see you again using it like that. And last but not least, the hoe. Now, there are lots of different types of hoe. This one is rather a glamorous modern version of what we always called the Dutch hoe, presumably because it started life in France. I joke. So the Dutch hoe is essentially a skimming tool. Don't try and dig with it. It's for skimming off annual weeds between rows of vegetables or between plants in a newly created border. And the thing to do with it is to make sure it doesn't go in too deeply. Now, it being winter, there aren't many weeds on here, but the thing to do is to skim it lightly underneath the surface, not far at all. And what it will do with annual weeds is quite literally cut them off at their stocking tops, separating root from shoot, and that means that annual weeds in particular will die. So that completes my gardener's essential toolkit. What I want to show you now is how to look after them. If you look after your implements, they will look after you, and they'll last a long while. The great thing about stainless steel, as soon as you've worked with them, here's the fork, run your hand across them, and they come up, provided that earth's damp. If it's not, dampen it, but if you clean them the moment you've used them, that needs no further preparation down there. And the handle on these new implements is varnished anyway, so until that varnish wears off, that needs no maintenance at all. That will do. It can hang up on a hook in winter if it's stainless steel. Cutting tools obviously need to be kept sharp. They also need to be kept so that the hinges, the moving parts on them, don't get bunged up either by rust or by dried sap, which gets very sticky, and then they start to stick and they'll drive you nuts. And also these little adjusters here, they get stiff and they don't work. Same thing here, 3-in-1 oil. What the oil doesn't do, just by putting it on there, is take care of the blades and the sharpening there. So the thing to do, what I like to do here, is first of all get the sap off with some wire wool or sandpaper. Doesn't really matter which, just look at that, you'll see it all begins to shine up. And this makes them much more smooth running. The blade, the cutting blade, needs to be done on both sides. Aside from being easier to use when they're nice and sharp and clean, blades like this then make a cleaner cut on the plant without damaging the tissue. And damaged tissue lets in fungus diseases that will damage the plants. What you'll find if you cut inadvertently into a bit of wire with these secateurs, you get little burrs and then they start to cut unevenly or poorly. So get a sharpening stone. Now this one's quite large, really. You can get smaller ones than this. And the important thing is to get the angle right of this sharpening stone on that angle there, which is slightly tapered on the edge of the blade. Run it right the way down to the edge at that angle. Work your way to the end and then turn it over and make sure you're working it flat, and you'll remove those burrs, and then again just whip across there with the oily rag and that'll stop them rusting. Perfect. If you want more gardening advice and inspiration like this, then why not subscribe to my channel? I'm posting new videos every week.